folks, welcome to the Fallon Forum here on Wednesday afternoon. Yeah, I know it's barely afternoon, but still, it's afternoon, so cut me some slack, okay? Hey, we got a great show here for you today. Later in the program, we're going to talk with Julia Crawford. She's a family farmer from Texas whose land has been basically appropriated through eminent domain by TransCanada for the Keystone Pipeline, even as she and her family sought to appeal the decision. An incredible story. I'm looking forward to talking with her about that calamity in the second half of this program. The first half of the show here, we've got Adam Mason in the studio. We're going to talk about the Fix the Debt campaign and why that is not as warm and fuzzy as it might sound. We're also going to kind of provide a verbal letter to the editor response to Bruce Rastetter's opinion piece about his warm and fuzzy dream for the corporate agriculture of the future. Anyway, before we get to that, I got a couple things to run by you here, folks. Apparently, no good deed goes unrejected, I guess. The trooper who was fined $181.50 for speeding Governor Branstad along the roads of northern Iowa, that fine was paid by Larry Hedlund, which I mean, everybody I've talked to thought, wow, what a guy. I mean, he feels some responsibility because of the high profile he brought to the incident. So that's the only reason the trooper ever got fined. So Larry pays the fine. Well, I thought that was pretty nice. If I ever get a fine, Larry, I'm going to call you. I'd like you to come pay my fines too. But anyway, Trooper Steve Lawrence was not pleased, or maybe he was ordered by, I don't know, Branstad or who knows who else. Maybe he got orders from above that he was to return that payment. Well, he's got to talk to the Humboldt County Courthouse about sending that money back. Anyway, it's kind of incredible, really. The drama in Speedgate just keeps getting juicier. I don't know where it's going to end, but maybe it'll end on Election Day next year and not end well for Branstad. Another angle on the Speedgate situation. Okay, you know that Louis Lavaretto, the former Supreme Court judge, former head of the Iowa Supreme Court, has been appointed by Branstad. How good is that? To do a review of the case of the firing. So, again, the problem is it's going to only look at whether there were existing. It's going to look at whether there were sufficient grounds for Hedlund's dismissal or his termination. It doesn't have to address, for example, whether that termination was consistent with other cases that might have come before the Department of Public Safety. It's also not going to address the question that a lot of us are concerned about, and that is whether or not Branstad or anybody else on the state payroll, any other high-ranking officials, might have used that firing as a retaliation for Hedlund's reporting of Branstad's speeding. Now, again, there is a court. There's a legal counsel has been retained. There is a court case going to be heard, and hopefully the intent of what Branstad might be trying to do here is to derail this whole thing by having Lavaretto's report come out prior to any legal proceedings can move forward on this. We'll see. It's a very interesting drama. It just gets more and more interesting. Great letter to the editor recently by Gordon Miller from Urbandale. Some of those very ideas expressed in that letter. So we're going to keep a close track of that because it just tells you so much about how the Branstad mind and administration works. And it ain't pretty. Okay, one more thing, and this is a great segue into our conversation with Adam Mason. You remember the case a few weeks ago where a bunch of Iowans, mostly in Lynn County apparently, were sickened by the Cyclospora virus, the parasite that apparently tainted some salad, and it wasn't from Iowa. We don't know where it was from, and apparently we never will. And I hope somebody, this to me is appalling. This is another example of the secrecy that the Branstad administration and government more broadly want to cloak everything that should be public and open. Okay, Steve Mannernock, he's the food safety chief for the Iowa Department of Inspections and Appeals. He said yesterday that there was no public health purpose to telling consumers who produced and sold the salads. Oh, thank you for condescending to me and the rest of the world. He goes on to say, quote, typically, we release the information if it enhances public safety. No, you release the information because it should be open and available to the public. maybe I want to know where I bought that bag of salad from so I don't do it again. I mean, this is so condescending. This is absolutely wrong. And I know we're not going to get any challenge from Governor Branstad's administration. I mean, it's part of his administration making that decision. I hope some citizens group comes forth and challenges that. That is so wrong. I mean, I can't imagine anybody on the political left, right, or center thinking that government has a right not to tell us who poisoned us. I mean, even if it was an accident, that's fine. Accidents happen, but whoa, what happened to the screen, Maddie? Accidents happen, but, we have a right to know. Anyway, all right, we're going to switch gears here a little bit and talk with Adam Mason about the Fix the Debt campaign. I know it's a very dramatic pose you're seeing me hold right now on the screen, but we'll fix that hopefully. In the meantime, you'll still get to enjoy the audio version of this conversation. Adam, welcome to the show.
Hi, Ed. Thanks.
Okay, everybody can't see what a dapper-looking guy Adam Mason is today, but anyway. The Fix the Debt campaign. First of all, tell us what that is, would you?
Sure. So, Fix the Debt. Sounds great. There's a lot of talk about in Washington, D.C., here at home on Main Street about what are we going to do about this debt? We're getting closer to another debt ceiling. The sequester, is it working? Isn't working? Folks are kind of confused about it all. But this Fix the Debt, they present themselves as a nonpartisan group of business leaders, community leaders, and what they really want to do is, they're with us. They're with everyday folks, and they want to do something about this debt. Sounds great, right? Well,
it does, because the debt is a problem. The deficit is a problem. They do need to be addressed. But that's probably where the agreement ends.
Exactly, Ed. You hit the nail on the head. What they want is simple. We would kind of uncloak their true motives. What they really want is basically more money. More money in the hands of the few, more money in the hands of big corporations through a number of different measures. One of the primary things that they're talking about at Fix the Debt is called a territorial tax system. Sounds pretty complex, but it's just a fancy
territorial tax system.
Yes. Sounds pretty complex, I know.
So we're going to put more taxes on Guam?
No, it's actually going to allow big corporations to put money there or profits that they're making anywhere else in the world and not be taxed on it here at home if they're headquartered here.
I thought that happened already.
Kind of, but this is
with combined reporting is an attempt to try to rail that in. But
exactly. Imagine that on an international scale now.
All right.
So that through more tax shelters, these big corporations can continue to hide more and more profits.
Okay.
So how do we fix the debt then? Well, they would advocate that we need more jobs. I agree with them there. We do need more jobs. But they also advocate that to fix this debt, we need to get those pesky entitlements under control. So basically, to fix the debt...
Entitlements like farm subsidies, oil and gas company.
No, not those.
Oh, okay.
Got any others?
Military contracts
no,
to Whitewater
those.
and other private interests?
No, not
How
those.
about the private prison industry?
Not that one either.
All right, well, keep going. You help me out here.
So they think the way to find the solution to fix the debt is by looking in our grandparents' pocketbooks and by cutting food stamps. Those entitlement programs that actually help people, we don't need those. What we need to do is continue to cut corporate property taxes, corporate income taxes, so that they can create more jobs. Now, Ed, I'm going to ask you another question. Have you seen...
Oh, God, this is the turn. I'm usually the one asking the tough questions. Now I got a guest, a little uppity guest here asking me questions. Okay.
Have you seen tax cuts anytime over the last 30 to 40 years? I know you haven't been around that long, but...
Well, I have actually. But
oh, come on. You're 29 going on 30. Have you seen that work to create jobs?
No, actually, Reagan had this conversation back in the 80s. And George Bush the elder called it voodoo economics, and he was vindicated. Of course, Reagan won the election. It proved to be a very good campaign theme. But then when you look at how it actually played out, no, trickle-down economics do not work. And then the best description of how ineffective trickle-down economics is, I think, I've heard, is from Tom Harkin, who said saying you want to help the poor by giving the by giving the rich a tax cut is like saying you want to feed the sparrows by giving the horse an extra helping of oats.
Wow, that's amazing. So yeah, that's exactly it. That's what Fix the Debt has done. They've managed to repackage this old idea of trickle-down economics under this great sounding term. We're going to fix the debt. We're going to do it using the same old failed methods, though. So that's really what they're all about. And they are kind of we would call them a puppet group, figureheads from across the state, CEOs primarily.
No, and it's bipartisan, you said.
Correct.
It sounds like it's more in keeping with the congressional Republican agenda, although, again, we see problems on the Democratic side as well. I mean, the Democrats in the Senate want to cut the food stamp. Well, they have passed.
They agreed to, yeah.
They've agreed to pass a legislation cutting food stamps by $400 million, which seems horrible to me until you look at the U.S. House, where they wanted to do $2 billion, and that was more than even the House Republicans could stomach, and they voted against the bill. But you get Steve King, who wants to do $20 billion. He wants to cut food stamps by $20 billion. So yeah, it is a bipartisan problem. Republicans probably being a more serious part of the problem. But who are some of the Democrats that are lining up behind this?
So here in Iowa, some of those Democrats, have actually stepped off. Andy McGuire, who
candidate for lieutenant governor with Mike Bluin when I ran against Bluin back in 2006. Yeah,
that's correct.
I'm very familiar.
She is the former co-chair here in Iowa. She removed herself from this. Representatives Bruce Hunter. Removed himself.
Oh, well, good for him. I mean, I can't imagine Bruce being. Andy McGuire is what I would call a corporate Democrat.
Right.
I mean, she was a perfect fit for Mike Bluin.
Right.
The king of corporate Democrats.
Exactly.
So,
former Congressman Dave Nagel was on this at one time.
Oh, really?
He has removed himself.
Wow.
But we do see people like, Dave Oman, former, longtime former staff for Governor Branstad, is one of the current co-chairs, Senator Bill Dix. Some of the Democrats, Senator Joe Singh from the Quad Cities, former Representative Dolores Mertz from Northwest Iowa.
Yeah, and some of those are what we call dinos, Democrat in name only.
Exactly. So, we can kind of see that what they were looking for was grasstops leaders who were kind of bought into this corporate agenda and willing to basically carry water for it.
Okay, so again, who's funding it? I mean, where's the money coming from?
That's a great question, Ed. It's coming from a handful of mega donors and CEOs. Some money directly from corporations. There's a number of I think there's 20 corporations that are on the Fix the Debt Steering Committee. So basically, this is kind of like another ALEC as well. That are primarily focused on economic policy.
That's the American Legislative Exchange Council,
right?
That have been implicated in basically writing a lot of the right-wing legislation that states around the country have been enacting.
Exactly, and so this would be them on more of a federal scale and focused kind of like a laser beam on our economic policy.
Folks, if you want to join the conversation, Adam Mason's with me this morning. We're talking about this morning. I already said that. This afternoon, we're talking about the corporate Fix the Debt campaign. Again, I think very few of us would argue that the debt and the deficit are problems, but a lot of the proposed solutions are going to simply make the problem worse and pass the burden of fixing the debt off onto the middle class and the struggling working people of this country who can ill afford to shoulder the burden as the ultra wealthy have continued to do well despite our meager recovery from the recession. So we'll continue talking about that. We also want to talk about the Bruce Rastetter's column about his warm and fuzzy vision for the future of agriculture. And you're welcome to join the conversation on either one of these topics. It's 244-0077, 244-0077, or toll free, it's 855-244-0077. I do want to thank the Iowa chapter of the Sierra Club, also Iowa Physicians for Social Responsibility, and the Great March for Climate Action for being the nonprofits that help make this program possible. I also want to thank Gateway Market & Cafe for sponsoring this segment of our show. And if you're not familiar with Gateway, folks, you are missing out because this is a great local grocery store owned by people in the community, keeping the money here in the community, and buying a lot of their products from local farms and producers. So check them out, folks, at 20th and Woodland. Not just a grocery store, but a cafe for breakfast, lunch, and supper. I'll be back in just a few minutes with Adam Mason continuing our conversation today on the Fallon Forum.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Drug and alcohol addiction slowly steals a person's identity, tearing away pieces of their life little by little until one day it seems like the hope of a happy future is gone and there's no chance of getting it back. Here at St. Gregory Retreat Centers, we can assure you that there is hope. Our unique approach to recovery begins with the understanding that the dysfunction and damage caused by addiction can be overcome, not just dealt with. Don't let another day go by. Call St. Gregory today.
Well, good morning. This is the 7th of June in the Lord's year 2010, and this is day 1 of webcast1live.com. We will begin with Max World Live with my special guest, Tom Coates. In just a minute, there's Tom. Wait. Howdy. And we will be live for the very first time on Webcast One Live. Someday we're going to look back on this and say, gosh, remember that old day in history? Wonder where Walter Cronkite was. He must have been around hanging there too. But actually, it's the beginning of Webcast One Live. And thank you for listening. Thanks, Rob Spearman, and everybody who's put together this project together. And we're ready to go live now. So thanks for listening to MaxWorldLive.com.
I can't tell you that it's going real well from time to time, but it is going.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Welcome back, folks. You know, I really should have been born in a simpler time when the primary mode of communication was a stone tablet and a chisel. I get freaked out by technology. Anyway, here I am doing a show online and on the radio. So I'm glad I have people who have a clue working on this stuff. But suddenly I look up at the screen and I see that I'm frozen in space like this, and I think, oh. That's not a good way to be. Anyway, there's something wrong with that. So anyway, we got that figured out. My illustrious producer, Maddie Kane, the glorious czaress of all things technical, has sorted through it, and we are back and running as we should be. I want to thank the Immigrant Entrepreneur Summit for sponsoring this segment of our show, and I want to thank some of my other business supporters as well. I've got some great restaurant clients that I hope you'll consider supporting, like Hawk Restaurant in the East Village. Hawk gets 90% of its food from Iowa farmers and local producers. Great place and a very creative agenda as well, creative menu. Also, they're open for brunch on Sundays in addition to lunch and dinner. Another one of my favorite Sunday brunch places is Tally's in Beaverdale. Tally's has rooftop seating with a pretty decent view of the treetops of Beaverdale, and also seating on the street level as well. Other restaurant clients include Ritual Cafe, which again is more noted for coffee and, in my case, great tea selection and smoothies, but they've got a wonderful lineup of panini as well, panini sandwiches and music on the weekends often. That's at 13th and Locust. Also at 13th and Locust is the Fighting Burrito. We can get custom-made burritos for a very, very good price. They're also located in Ames on Welch Avenue. All right, so on to, we're talking food, we're talking farming, we're talking Bruce Rastetter, everybody's favorite family farmer, right?
Yeah, you could say that. I wouldn't say that, but
I was surprised to see him with an editorial in the paper. I really was. I mean, he's come under a lot of heat in the last couple of years. In fact, we have successfully applied heat to the point where he's no longer conducting this massive land grab in Tanzania, a land grab that would have been the equivalent of two counties, Polk and Dallas combined, for example.
That's right. And
he's backed off that. Iowa State University was part of this partnership, this public-private partnership. They've backed out of it. We've made some progress. And Rastetter, he got some flack for the interface between his business world and his work in the College of Ag at Iowa State University. His questionable conflict of interest on the Board of Regents. So he's got a PR challenge. So I'm thinking that's why he's writing this warm and fuzzy piece about agriculture and how wonderful the future looks as we produce 100% more food in 30 years than we do now. And the only way we're going to do that is with Bruce Raster's approach of more technology, more GMO, bigger farms, more efficiencies, he calls it. So,
Right.
what's your take? What's the CCI take on this perspective?
Well, where do we start at? I mean, there's just a laundry list of things we could take a look at. And first I just want to say that, I think to some extent, I think that Bruce Rastetter actually believes what he's writing here. Unfortunately, it's just not the way that we see it at CCI. It's not the way I think that a lot of everyday Iowans see it. And it also fails to reflect the byproducts of this style of farming, which, again, like I said, there's a laundry list of things in here we could talk about. We would not disagree that, farming has become more efficient, but what impacts have that had?
What does efficiency mean? I mean, we have more soil loss than ever before.
Right.
And I've got a graphic I'd love to share with you if Maddie can pull that up. And we've got serious problems. Efficiency may be one thing, but look, we've declined from having about 80,000 hog producers in Iowa to less than 8,000 hog producers.
That's right.
How efficient is that for the 72,000 that are no longer able to produce hogs because of the way that we have changed the laws to enable corporate farms to come in?
Exactly. And the small towns in Iowa that are dying because there's no farming economy out in those rural communities. When you've got 8,000 factory farms shipping 20 million hogs to 5 packing plants or 6 packing plants across Iowa, that's a huge loss of jobs in all these rural communities that used to have lockers, that had veterinarians, that had local businesses to cater to those farm families. Yeah. So is that what we get for efficiency? If so, I don't want to be a part of that efficiency. So
I mean, how do you challenge people, Rastetter and others who say, well, we want cheap food, we've got safe food. I question how safe it is sometimes with all the
exactly
all the recalls and. I mean, look at the horrible situation with how many people were infected by DeCoster eggs,
Right.
But still, I mean, but we have this we present this picture of this safe, cheap food supply, and yeah, it may be safe on one level compared to some situations, but another safety question I have is how many people in this country are suffering from diabetes or heart conditions or other dietary related illnesses because our food maybe it doesn't poison them directly and immediately, but it's basically poisoning you over the long haul. You can't make a high fructose corn syrup cannot be a mainstream in your diet, and expect to remain healthy.
Right. That's the first question we should be asking. If we're feeding a growing world, what are we feeding them? We're talking about a 2-cycle row crop system here where we cycle between corn and beans. We're using that corn and those beans to make oils, to make high fructose corn syrup and plastic, ethanol, those kinds of things. Last time I checked, it's not good to eat plastic, to eat ethanol, and too much high fructose corn syrup can be bad for you. Yes. So what are we feeding them?
You actually checked on that?
A couple taste tests. Yeah. But the second question I would ask is, if we want to feed the world, what's the best way to do that? Is it to export this row crop system, or is it to empower, local communities across the world to feed themselves and to do that in a way where they're, growing locally, like we want to do here in Iowa, grow what we can grow here, so that we're focused on more local economies, focus more on local crops that sustain our soils and our water.
But part of the problem is, Rastetter talks about part of his focus here is to talk about the connection between education and agriculture. And he talks about the important role that Iowa State University plays in helping to, move agriculture forward. And again, forward in what direction? And it really looks like it's going in the direction where his type of agriculture will continue to remain prominent. And you look at the fact that, the state budget is strapped when it comes to appropriate levels of funding for higher education. Right. And so more and more money comes from people like Rastetter, who endowed the College of Ag with a $2 million gift?
Right.
I say gift, but really it was an investment.
Right. For his chair that focuses on agricultural entrepreneurship. Yeah. That means making more money from agriculture. That's what that means. That's what that chair is supposed to figure out how to do. So, I think you're exactly right, Ed, is that education is needed here. No argument about that, but it's again, what kind of education, what are our studies focusing on? Are we going to allow, because there's an advisory board at ISU that Rastetter was on until he became a regent. Now his right-hand man, Eric Peterson, is on that board. But basically it's made up of representatives from Monsanto, from Pioneer, from Cargill, from Smithfield Foods, I'm sure, that are helping direct the study of agriculture at our land-grant university. What does that mean for projects like the Leopold Center? Are they going to be allowed to do equal amounts of research into sustainability? And
well, the Harkin Center, where Tom Harkin was going to place his incredible volume of papers and was going to conduct research, and basically it was ixnayed because it's inconsistent with the direction that Rastetter and others have been pushing the College of Ag successfully.
Right.
I mean, I know there are efforts to try to provide some balance, but they are minimal compared to the focus on corporate agriculture. I mean, so much so that Harkin said, okay, I've had enough. We're going to take this stuff to Drake University instead, where we can have some academic freedom. I mean, the idea that a corporate agenda, because of big donations to the college, should control the research that comes out of an independent entity that is basically named after and supported through a U.S. senator. That's just that's incredible to me.
Right. And I would even go one step further to say, to us, it's wrong.
Yeah. Okay. Incredible and wrong. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, this is something that we're constantly seeing. And how does this happen? Through increased political influence of folks like Bruce Rastetter. Not only are they able, that's how they win these appointments is to the Board of Regents. Then they control the direction of study. And then they put out a feel-good piece that makes us all feel a lot better about feeding the world, which is just completely wrong.
Yeah. Recently not recently, a while back, we had another corporate ag fellow, Tom Dorr from Northwest Iowa, who this is way back during the Bush. Bush wanted to appoint him to be the Undersecretary of Rural Affairs, and Harkin opposed him. He was so bad.
Wow.
Harkin opposed. It's unusual for an Iowan to be opposing another Iowan's appointment to a key position in government. But it was so bad. I mean, the guy's vision of agriculture was one farm per county.
Wow.
Now, how different is, Rastetter's vision takes that one step better. In Tanzania, he wants one farm per 2 counties.
Right.
And so, how can anybody, there's no culture left in agriculture when you are that massive, when you are controlled by one corporate operation. And this is a great, take a look at this, Adam. This is a graph, or a map rather, that was in the Des Moines Register today. And it shows just how much additional land is being converted to agriculture. Again, in the counties that are wide, you're looking at Monona County in western Iowa, Montgomery County down to the south, a handful of counties in southeast Iowa, and then 3 up in the northern part of the state. Those are counties where between 2,500 and 5,000 acres of highly erodible land, most of it grasslands, were plowed up to grow crops. Okay. Nationwide, it's 5.3 million acres, 5.3 million. That land really is, it's been in pasture or in timber for a reason. It's highly erodible.
Right.
And you look at the other counties, the counties that are in brown, down in the mostly southern part of the state. And again, that's really rolling country down there. In those counties, between 5,000 and 15,000 acres have been converted to cropland between 2008 and 2012. The 4 counties that are in red, Adair, Taylor, Ringgold, and Wayne, those all have seen between 15,000 and 25,000 acres converted. So it's a big problem. It's a huge problem, and it's not going to get any better as long as the Bruce Rastetter model of corporate farming continues to dominate.
I agree 100%. It's kind of interesting to look at that map. You're just south of the Raccoon River watershed. You're in the Iowa River watershed. These are some of the most polluted waterways in Iowa.
In the country.
In the country, right.
In the country, yeah.
And they're all feeding into the Mississippi.
Yeah.
The kind of progress that Bruce Rastetter wants to see isn't the same kind of progress we want to see.
I would hope that CCI might be putting out a a response to this, maybe?
I think that's a great idea, and I think we'll probably work on that.
There's no reason I shouldn't too, but I just thought it'd be easier than me writing it to ask you to do it.
Sure, yeah. I think you're exactly right. Because we do have a vision for agriculture and for conservation, for farming in Iowa that supports family farmers and that gets us back to hopefully to address some of these problems while continuing to be a leader in agriculture. I mean, of course we should be.
Yeah. And it isn't just a Midwest problem. It's a national problem. It's a global problem. Adam, before you run, on a lighter note, you and I know what the Midwest is, right?
That's right.
Okay. It's about, 11 states or so. In fact, Mike Draper of Reagan fame has a great book called The Midwest, God's Gift to the World, or God's Gift to Planet Earth, maybe. But apparently, if you ask people who live on the coasts what the Midwest is, here's the map you get. Here's the map of the Midwest to people who don't live here. This is what they think the Midwest is like. That's what the Midwest is like to those of us who live here. And of course, we are right smack in the middle of it. But if you look at here's what the rest of oh my gosh, what's Maddie doing? Here's what the rest of the country thinks the Midwest is. Pretty much everything except for what's on the coasts. Wow. Which I'm thinking, okay, let's run with that. Let's grab onto that. Let's define that as the Midwest, and we'll become the new political powerhouse in this country. California doesn't stand a chance. The South, forget it. Your political cloud is gone. The Midwest is going to rule this nation. Anyway,
that's right. And right in the middle, of course, is
Iowa. There we go.
We're the heart of the heartland.
And Des Moines is the heart of the heartland. We are the cultural and culinary crossroads of America.
That's right.
All right. Anyway, a little fun with that. Hey, again, thanks for joining us, Adam.
No problem. Thank you, Ed.
And thanks for putting up with the slight technical glitches during this conversation. Again, we're talking about important stuff that's going to be continually on the front burner as the forces of corporate ag continue to try to consolidate their holdings in a world where more and more people are understanding the importance of knowing where their food comes from, when more and more people are trying to get back on the land to grow food the way food was intended to be grown. Anyway, we'll be talking more about this in the future, of course. When we come back from a short break, we're going to talk with Julia Crawford. She's a farmer in Texas, and she's been hard hit by TransCanada and the Keystone Pipeline.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
I'm Brian Leach, owner and general manager of Service Legends. I brought along a couple of the home comfort heroes.
Hi, I'm Tammy Wells.
I am Nick Wonderscheid.
I'm administrative manager.
I'm the senior technician
from Service Legends.
It seems like every good thing, when you feel it to the bone that it's good, there's a lot of hard work put behind it. I don't think that you can fake it and have it turn out good.
If we seem like, okay, that's just weird, it's just a furnace, why would you believe so deeply in a furnace? It's not just that, we want to show the world that you can have good service.
Yeah, it's gotta be, it's your home.
It's built into our daily trainings, it's built into our culture, that we're gonna do whatever it takes to have each client say they love us, period.
That's why we spend all the hours in the training that we do. And if we guarantee it's gonna be a good experience for you, or else it's free, what type of work do you think we're gonna do?
There is a guarantee.
Temperature selection guarantee, fixed right or it's free guarantee, comfort guarantee, best value guarantee. All of these guarantees hold us accountable to ensuring that we exceed your expectations. And if for whatever reason we'd fail and we can't make it right, we guarantee all of those guarantees with a 100% money back guarantee.
If you don't think that your technician can fix it right, are you gonna say that to a client? No.
You don't have to worry about having a technician come to your house.
We drug test, background check all of our team members. We put safe people in your home. Each and every one of our service techs, 400 hours a year in training.
You tell it the minute they walk in the door. They know what they're doing, they've done their homework, and they actually truly care about what you want.
Because at the end of the day, you're the person that makes sure I have a job.
They're gonna be listening. They're gonna wanna know what your challenges are. Then they're gonna come and give you options, and you get to choose.
If I'm there to help and I make it easy and painless, I did my job right that day.
Well, when it comes to your comfort, safety, and your family, you don't necessarily go buy the most expensive, but you get the most bang for your buck.
Oh, it's worth it, because there's a lot of people that will find a way to get it to work right now and then leave and then come back, charge you again, and the cycle just repeats itself. So when I'm out there looking at the furnace, I want to find why it failed today. How can we change the part today with something that you're not going to have to worry about? Is it worth changing the part today? You can put a lot of money into a furnace. I can fix parts all day. There's good job security in that for me, but is it the right thing for you?
I get a lot of the phone calls of after the technicians are there. They're just in awe. They're like, wow, you guys are great. I mean, I don't even know what to say. You guys are great. Everything you did was perfect. It was great.
Keep going, though. I like this.
Just give us a try. I'm going to take all the risk.
I've got the time to make this right. I've got the support to make it right.
Just check us out.
And if you don't see the value in what we do,
I mean, fixed right or it's free or 100% money back.
enough said.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
That's Max Wellman, and we're back to the conversation. And this segment of our show is sponsored by Gateway Marketing Campaign. It is not sponsored by this guy or his monkey. That's Justin Bieber, and he's got his little monkey there. And apparently, the German government is trying to get him to pay up $1,500 for the monkey's care. They've had to take care of the monkey because he could not bring it into the country. I love this line. A spokesman from Germany said Tuesday that if Bieber does not pay, or Bieber, however you say his name, Bieber does not pay, customs officials, quote, have ways of making him pay. I just love that. I'm just going back to Hogan's Heroes and having a great time sitting on the sofa waiting for my mom to say dinner is ready. Okay, that's funny. What's happening to Julia Crawford in Texas is not the least bit funny. And it's another, you know, her farm is another casualty of climate change and the whole effort to drill the tar sands, transport it to the Gulf, and in the process build this huge pipeline. And we haven't seen, of course, that pipeline activity up in this part of the country, but down in Texas and Oklahoma, it's already a reality. Julia, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
And we've also got Charles Goldman on the line. I'm sure he's got a scalpel in one hand and operating on somebody as he's preparing to join the conversation here.
No, actually, I'm just sitting in my office.
Oh, you are? Okay, good. Good. Julia, yeah, Charles is the one that put me in touch with you, and I appreciate that a lot. Your situation sounds tragic. I mean, you've been fighting the appropriate court, you know, the appropriate judicial proceedings to try to put a halt to this, at least have it appeal, a conversation about whether what TransCanada is doing is proper, is legal. And yet, instead of waiting as should happen, they're continuing to plow ahead with tearing up your land.
That's right. They, we're still in the appeals process. In fact, just yesterday had our appeals hearing on the issue on whether they can even take our land. And the night before, I watched TransCanada pull 4,000 feet of welded pipe through a tunnel under the ground, under the creek, and surfacing on my land, which is the last major step. So they're within probably a couple of weeks of being done on my place, and our case is being heard by 3 judges to decide whether they can take my land. That's like executing somebody before their appeal's over and then finding out later there's an oops.
Yeah.
You know, stranger things have happened.
Well, probably in Texas, that's more literal than it would be up here.
That's right.
Ed,
we do have ways of making you pay.
I like the environmental safety of putting the pipeline right under the creek.
Yeah, how smart is that? How good is? I mean, doesn't that present all sorts of water quality risks?
Oh, absolutely, and that was one of the reasons why we pushed back early on. We run 2 pivot irrigation systems from water in that creek, and the state has given us water rights to the creek, and we've had it for 30 years. So TransCanada's, when they draw a line from one point to the other, they apparently don't care whether they're going over or under or through, because not only are they going under my creek, but they are also plowing right through a field full of Caddo Indian artifacts. In fact, their own archaeologists found 140 artifacts in the easement, but say they're really not sure that they, are worth protecting. It's a process in Texas whereby the agencies who oversee pipelines are turning a blind eye, and TransCanada has found a system that only required they check a box. And once they checked the right box on the right form, the Railroad Commission let them take off. So what we're doing in court, and we're playing inside, we're coloring inside the lines on this. We're playing in the court of law that, we're citing statutes and legislative intent and going back to 1917. They shouldn't have the right to take our land to transport a Canadian product through our state to be exported to another country.
Yeah, now the Keystone Pipeline has been a major hot point for climate discussions in the last couple of years. And what we heard President Obama say in a speech not too long ago was that if exploiting the tar sands could be shown to be a detriment to further adding further carbon pollution to the atmosphere, he would not approve it. So here's what some of us aren't understanding. While there's still conversation as to whether or not the Keystone Pipeline will be approved, it looks like some parts are not only already approved, but are pretty much almost to the end of their end of construction. They're almost ready to be operated. What's going on with that?
That's part of what people don't understand. It originally was the Keystone XL project, started in Canada and wound up in Houston. And a year and a half ago, when the president denied the presidential permit, TransCanada wanted to find a way to get it done. So they just, kind of like a railroad train, they uncoupled a bunch of the cars. And that was the Oklahoma-Texas leg. That, because it didn't cross an international boundary, it didn't need the same set of permits. So they pushed forward with that with President Obama's blessing. He stood up in Cushing, Oklahoma last year and said, I'm going to fast-track the southern leg of this thing, and we're going to cut through the red tape. And
but here's my question. Once the southern leg is finished, what will stop them from putting in the rest of it? I mean, will they say, oh, well, even though we've got all that built, we're not going to approve the rest? I mean, how does that make sense?
Because, TransCanada is kind of doing an end around, I think partially because of our case. TransCanada built this pipeline to transport, Canadian sludge, diluted bitumen, to Houston to have refined. But as our case kind of got ramped up, we're citing legislation from 1917 saying the only way you can take land in Texas is if you're taking a product made in Texas from one place to another. So TransCanada has started spinning their story saying we're bringing Texas oil back into Texas. They're now saying this southern leg of the pipeline will help get rid of the glut of all kinds of crude product that's sitting in Cushing. But yeah, we're President Obama's story changes. You also see that about 3 days ago in the New York Times, he totally refutes the job numbers that TransCanada has been putting out there. He's saying, it's probably, realistically, it's probably around 2,000 jobs.
Is that construction jobs or?
I forgot what the quote was. He talks about, what's the exact, I think it was support, about 2,000 jobs on a part-time basis for about 2 years, and then after that, only 50 to 100.
Right, exactly. Those are the construction jobs, and the 50 to 100 jobs are what would be permanent jobs operating the entire length of the pipeline, if I understand correctly. Charles, is that your impression?
Yeah, I mean, that includes the entertainment personnel for the boom towns, for while they're building it.
I think I'm sorry, Charles, go ahead. I'll talk
after.
Well,
the big question is that there's actually a fair amount of refining capability outside of Chicago for this same sludge. So the question is, why are they dragging it through the entirety of the Midwest? Whatever the Midwest is, whether it includes the coasts or not, vis-a-vis your map. Why are they dragging it to the Gulf when it could, in fact, be refined much closer and much less environmental risk by just bringing it across the border into Illinois and doing it outside Chicago? And all you have to do is look at who owns the companies that own the refinery capability in Houston, and that gives you the answer of why this is being done.
Absolutely. They need a port. They need a port to get it out of the United States.
But you could use Chicago as a port. That's not the issue. The issue is that the people who own the refineries outside Chicago are Mexican and Brazilian refinery companies, not TransCanada, which, of course, has American multinationals as part of this project.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because it never made sense. It never made sense. Why wouldn't you refine this stuff at the border and then transport the much safer gasoline that comes out of it?
So my question would be, is what kind of political connections do those corporate interests in the Gulf have? I mean, whose campaigns are they funding? Whose skids are they greasing?
Hillary Clinton.
Well,
Hillary Clinton.
In Texas,
You said that pretty quick.
No, it's no question.
No question.
There's no question. The advisors on this project are involved heavily with Hillary Clinton.
Well, all you had to look at when Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State, there was this very cozy relationship between her former campaign manager, who was then hired by TransCanada to go back and be a lobbyist for them. I mean, there's this continuum of relationships that leaves no objectivity to any of the decision making.
Well, the other question to ask, the president and Julia and all of us asked, is if this is such a great project, why don't Canadians build it across their own country?
Yeah.
And we already know the answer to that, because they were told that the First Nation tribes wouldn't give them the land in British Columbia to allow them to do this.
And yet, in this country, you can just come right in and take the Crawford's land.
Exactly.
How many other family farmers, Julia, are being impacted similarly?
Well, for this project across Texas, I think it was 800 easements. And of those, there were 100 families who said no, and whose land, there was a petition for condemnation. Now, the vast majority of those folks settled because a battle like this is just exhausting and expensive. And the only way that we're in it is because of the generous donations of folks. And that's how Charles and I got a chance to meet. So at this juncture, though, there's just a handful of us still standing and in the court system.
Well,
maybe fewer than 5.
Wow. Well, good for you for fighting this. I've got to run to a short break, but if you can both stick around, I'd like to ask you, Julia, what I read somewhere was that that TransCanada essentially has hired all these this vast security force to ostensibly keep an eye on their investment, their equipment, even at a time when there was no equipment. So I got to ask you what's really going on there. I got to run to a break, but if you can stick around, I'd like to talk about that with you for a little bit.
Great.
All right, folks, we're going to come right back. I want to thank the Fighting Burrito for sponsoring this segment of our show. They're one of our restaurant clients at 13th and Locust in Des Moines, also in Ames on Welch Avenue. Please help support them and the other businesses that make this show possible. Businesses like Dan Kelly's real estate industry. And in Newton, if you got a home or business to sell or buy, give Dan Kelly a shout. Also, Diana's Wedding Cakes. Yes, you can import a wedding cake from Southeast Asia if you want, or you can get one locally from Diana in Newton. Diana's Wedding Cakes. Folks, I'll be back in just a couple minutes.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Drug and alcohol addiction slowly steals a person's identity, tearing away pieces of their life little by little until one day it seems like the hope of a happy future is gone and there's no chance of getting it back. Here at St. Gregory Retreat Centers, we can assure you that there is hope. Our unique approach to recovery begins with the understanding that the dysfunction and damage caused by addiction can be overcome, not just dealt with. Don't let another day go by. Call St. Gregory today.
Well, good morning. This is the 7th of June in the Lord's year 2010, and this is day 1 of WebcastOneLive.com. We will begin with Max World Live with my special guest, Tom Coates. In just a minute, there's Tom. Wait. Howdy. And we will be live for the very first time on Webcast One Live. Someday we're going to look back on this and say, gosh, remember that old day in history? Wonder where Walter Cronkite was. He must have been around hanging there too. But actually, it's the beginning of Webcast One Live. And thank you for listening. Thanks, Rob Spearman, and everybody who's put together this project together. And we're ready to go live now. So thanks for listening to MaxWorldLive.com.
I can't tell you that it's going real well from time to time, but it is going.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Well, good morning. This is the 7th of June in the Lord's year 2010, and this is day 1 of WebcastOneLive.com. We will begin with Max World Live with my special guest, Tom Coates. In just a minute, there's Tom.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
You know, I've worked with a lot of families here in Iowa who have fought eminent domain, fought the abuse of eminent domain to take their land. Sometimes it's an urban situation. More often than not, it's a rural situation. And here it's involved, many times it's involved folks wanting to condemn land to build a lake for recreational purposes. Sometimes it involves a highway. One case in Burlington, Iowa involved a mall that actually never got built. The people were evicted, their homes were demolished, the mall developer backed out. You know, this stuff happens all the time. We've made we put some restrictions on eminent domain here in Iowa and nationally as well, but it still is a huge problem. And I am just shocked at some of the things that you're having to experience, Julia, in Texas, dealing with TransCanada. Two questions before we wrap up the show here. One, I've heard that there are basically security forces hired to keep an eye on you. Well, what is that? I mean, are you that dangerous? You don't look that dangerous, but you might be. I don't know.
I go out there with a cell phone, a camera, and a three-legged dog. How dangerous can I be walking along a barbed wire fence? But
is your dog's name Tripod?
Well, his name is Skipper, but it was Skipper before he lost the leg. But when the local off-duty policemen and constables and sheriffs started showing up parking across the road, I'd go over and introduce myself and get to know them because they're just normal guys. And I'd say, curious, what are you guys here watching? And they said, we were hired to watch the equipment. And then I would turn and kind of say, what equipment? And they would sheepishly kind of shrug their shoulders. So for weeks, there was no equipment on the place, but they were parked across the road 24/7. And I would thank them for watching me and my cattle and my all the animals. When the equipment showed up, their force doubled. And then TransCanada brought in both a still photographer and a videographer. And the police had cameras too.
To film you filming them.
Yes, I would go out on my side of the fence and walk the fence and look at what they were doing, and they would trail me and film me and photograph me, and at times it became like a gunfight because I'd pull out my camera.
So were they?
And they said,
did they have any reason to? I mean, you never got violent, obviously, right?
Oh no,
you never.
And I asked, and they said, well, we know that you have, contacts with the media, and we just want to make sure that we're documenting everything from our side, which, they would also film me walking down the country road. They filmed me riding my bicycle. Their cameras would be turned to my home when they weren't even watching the construction. I think they tried to intimidate me, and you don't do that with me.
I got that. I get that impression. So I mean, Charles, what do you make of that? I mean, of all the eminent domain cases I've worked on here in Iowa, I've never heard of. I guess I have heard of one case where there were surveillance cameras involved, but it was kind of unusual. This seems like a way over the top. What do you make of it?
Well, I mean, I think that. Again, there's competition for where this sludge could go, and Texas is basically saying these are jobs for us in Houston, companies that are, American multinationals, and they'll do anything it takes to make it happen.
Well,
Julia could talk about all they had to check off was that they're a common carrier, which they're not. I mean, a common carrier implies other people have access to this pipeline. And is that the case, Julia?
Well, they say they do, but we've asked for that proof. They've not provided it in court. That was a huge discussion yesterday, and I was so pleased that one of the three justices on the appeals court turned to the TransCanada attorney and said, so you're saying the jobs you create, any number of jobs you create give you the chance to check that box. But the problem is there is no on-ramp in Texas for this oil. So a common carrier, Texas Oil can't get into this pipeline unless it's taken to Oklahoma. So, this whole common use. But yes, that's our position, is that they are not qualified as a common carrier and therefore do not have the right of eminent domain. If they could find landowners who willingly give them their land, then I can't stop them under the statutes that we're looking at. But they should not have the right to take my land.
So how much of your land is being consumed by this pipeline?
Okay, it's not a lot, but of the farm, it's about it's less than 2 acres. So yeah, I know it's not a whole lot, but it's the frontage road across a pasture, which then renders that entire pasture useless for anything else we ever want to do with it. We could never sell it, build a road, so it diminishes the value of the entire pasture.
Well, also, if
And you
there's
know
a
what? If
spill,
they
if there's a
wanted
spill,
12
it renders your
feet.
ranch unusable.
It does.
What if there's a
And
spill?
What if it spills? Yeah.
A spill renders me unable to use water, and I can't irrigate 400 acres of our crops.
And that's not just speculative. Spills happen all the time along the length of the Keystone Pipeline and other pipelines. That is just par for the course. You should expect a spill to happen somewhere in Texas, maybe in a couple places in Texas within 5 or 10 years of this pipeline existing. It's going to happen. History has that record.
Ed, the other thing about your eminent domain issue is understand that the overriding federal case right now dates back to the mid-2000s. Kilo, correct.
Yeah. Kilo.
In which basically, well, in this case it was local government, but I mean it's been extrapolated from there, that if you can take away private property and it generates more tax revenue, then that's a justifiable, utilitarian use of that land.
But the sad thing is that story ends up just like the shopping mall story. That facility was never built. I have met Ms. Kilo and talked to her about it.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. I mean, it's amazing that Ed brings up this story in
Burlington.
Iowa.
Yeah,
it's exactly the same story.
Yep. Yeah. So let me ask you this, Julia. What happens? And I hope you do. What happens if you win the appeal? I mean, they've already built the pipeline through your property. What happens? Do they have to tear it up?
Well, if we win this appeal at the appellate level, I'm sure TransCanada will appeal to the Texas Supreme Court. But let's assume that we prevail again. Should we win out, it means that TransCanada could not have taken our land. I'm sure they will try to convince us to change our mind, and that's what they've done with everybody else with dollars. Mm-hmm. But our family has said no. So should we prevail, I can only imagine they have to come take it out. They would then have to completely change the route across 2 counties. Because they obligated themselves to my corner.
I'm sure they do a nice landscaping job where they pull it up.
Yeah, right.
I'm sure.
Right.
They've obviously pulled up my artifacts, and what I've seen has not been pretty. Just, pushing the dirt around.
So I imagine rather than doing that, they would try every trick in the book to get you to take as big of a monetary compensation as they could muster.
I would assume that's the plan, but at this juncture, this is no longer the fight about just my little 2 acres.
Right.
This is a fight to set a precedent. And you know what? I've made a commitment to a lot of people that I'm going to stand, and I have an obligation that I won't. So it's not just my decision. It's my family's decision. But we stand pretty steadfast in this. This is not about, it's never been about money. It's about our right to say what happens on our land. And
you've got, I imagine, tons of legal bills relating to this, correct?
I do. Well, there are lots of legal bills just to get the documents sent from one courthouse to another, thousands of dollars. And the way I'm staying in this fight is through a legal defense fund. People are sending me nickels and dimes and dollars and big checks and little checks from all over the world to stay in this fight.
Okay. Well, and if folks want to do that, where do they go?
Oh, thank you. We have a website, standtallwithjulia.com. It was actually the website for our benefit concert, but we've turned it into my blog post and a place where you can donate and keep up with with our fight. So thanks for giving me a chance. Standtallwithjulia.com.
All right. Well, hey, we really feel for you. It's a tough situation to be in, and I appreciate the fact that you are fighting the good fight. And again, thank you, Charles, for helping to bring this issue to our attention.
Pleasure. I mean, these are the externalities that, of course, no one ever sees.
Yeah, I mean, Keystone is going to be a traumatic experience for the entire planet because of all the additional carbon emissions. But, people don't sometimes realize how it affects, family farmers and others right here, right now as well. So thank you for putting a face on this problem, Julia.
Well, thank you for the chance to tell my story.
All right. Good luck.
Thanks.
And thanks again, Charles, for joining us.
That was my pleasure.
All right.
All right.
Folks, I want to thank you for sticking around for the conversation today. We'll be back with more talk tomorrow on the Fallon Forum. Again, I want to thank all of my business supporters. Go to the website, fallonforum.com. You'll learn about Sergeant's Garage, one of my longtime supporters. Sergeant's is at 6th and College in the Riverbend neighborhood. They've been servicing my vehicles for a long time. Also, Dr. Holding, Kim Holding with the Story County Veterinary Clinic on Highway 30 between Ames and Nevada. Kim has been working as a vet for over 32 years. Give her a shout if you've got a critter that needs some attention. I also want to thank S&P Piano. S&P Piano have moved my piano way more times than their backs would like to admit. But you can find out, again, more information about S&P on my website, fallonforum.com. I'll be back tomorrow, folks. I want to thank Maddie Kane, my producer. I want to thank Webcast One Live for providing this studio. And thank you for joining us.
From From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.